Welcome to You Decide. I'm your host, Errol Lewis. My guest today is Jonathan Mahler. He's the staff writer at the New York Times Magazine, who is the author of a book you might have heard of. It's called Ladies and Gentlemen, the Bronx is Burning. It's a classic book. It's about New York City in 1977 and what a crazy year that was. It was an election year. It was a pennant year for New York. It was an important sports year. It was also the year that there was a blackout, rioting. It was a crazy, crazy time. Anyway, he's back with a brand new book. Arguably, it's a prequel, but it's also a sequel to that last one. It's called Gods of New York, Egotists, Idealists, Opportunists, and the Birth of the Modern City, 1986 to 1990. Jonathan is here with me. We're going to get into some current events as well while we've got him here. Congratulations. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And you keep it real simple. Each year is its own chapter.
Exactly.
86, 87, 88. So I say it's also a prequel because you're showing us the backstory of people who are very much in the news right now. People with names like Donald Trump, Al Sharpton, Curtis Sliwa,
Rudy Giuliani,
right. Who were all at their peak and in their heyday, and also sort of in formation in the 1980s. Yeah. What made you decide to do this?
Yeah, well, I kind of got started on it when I was, my day job at the Times, I was covering the 2016 campaign. I was doing some sort of longer pieces about the candidates, not following a specific candidate. And because of the Bronx is Burning, I was kind of into the New York history, kind of naturally gravitated toward early Trump, 1980s Trump. And I, kind of started looking at that period of time in the city, and it was just such a crazy time with these outsized characters, and also like a really transformative moment in the life of the city, which I kind of get into, which kind of frames the narrative. And, then it kind of occurred to me, I had read, Bonfire of the Vanities in college and had, an image of what New York was like in these years, but it sort of occurred to me that this was a great story with great characters, and it also occurred to me that this was actually the natural, as you say, it was both the sequel to The Bronx is Burning. This was the city. I was going to tell the story of the city in the 80s, which was the city that rose on the ashes of the fiscal crisis. And at the same time, it is a prequel. It foreshadows where our country is today and the characters who are still kind of running it today.
That's right. A lot of these people just never went away, right? I mean, and I love that you mentioned, Bonfire of the Vanities is a great work of fiction. I'd urge everybody to take a look at it because it captures that era in a very important way. And so does Do the Right Thing, which you talk about.
Totally.
And, Spike Lee, of course, makes the movie during this period. But reality is just as captivating, right? I mean, if anything, a little bit more complicated, right? Because you don't have the option of just using a lot of fictional devices. But let's start with the framework, the financial innovation, right? On the heels of the fiscal crisis, the city is coming back. And Wall Street is exploding. It's not just that Wall Street is coming back. It's not just Wall Street is having a series of good years. There's some fundamental innovations that are really going to transform the way business is done on Wall Street, and therefore bringing in just rivers and billions of dollars into New York City.
That's right. So, and part of that is technological change, which kind of allows for all sorts of new kind of investment vehicles and devices. It allows for the rise of junk bonds, of course, which kind of fueled the kind of corporate takeover craze during these years. You remember the movie Wall Street, probably, the image of, Michael Douglas with a massive shoe phone. So part of it was technology. Part of it was Reagan. Part of it was just a very deliberate kind of a regime of deregulation down in Washington, wanting to make it easier for people to trade and lower all those kind of barriers. And part of it was just sort of the city's policies. So, after the fiscal crisis, the city was desperate for development. They wanted to get the economy moving again. And so they offered all sorts of incentives to developers, like Donald Trump and many others, to build. So tax breaks, zoning waivers. So, that really enabled the money that was kind of, that as you say, was just kind of exploding on Wall Street to kind of flow out into the streets and into these new skyscrapers.
And coincidentally, one of the people who's running the internal part of one of the Wall Street firms is a guy named Mike Bloomberg, right? Who we're later going to see, right? These people all come back again and again. But now at the same time, you're talking about what I vividly remember, because this is around the time I got here. I got here in 1985 after college.
Perfect.
There's poverty, there's an underclass, there's something called homelessness that's emerging for the first time.
Yep.
And it is real, and it is deep, and it is bitter. And the city's not doing such a good job of coping with that part of the equation.
Yeah, exactly. So really you have what is kind of on the surface this like amazing rebirth right after the 70s and the kind of the urban decay, the urban blight, the white flight out of the city, all the capital fleeing the city. Then you have this on the surface what looks like this amazing rebirth, the booming Wall Street, the skyscrapers shooting up, but just beneath the surface you have so many people who were left out of this so-called rebirth. So the college-educated New Yorkers who in an earlier era had jobs. There were plenty of jobs for working-class New Yorkers when there were factories, when there was shipping, when there were powerful labor unions. Now those jobs are gone, and you have a lot of New Yorkers who are kind of left behind.
Sure.
At the same time that the city's shrinking its government, and shrinking its kind of safety net and municipal services. So these people, are really feeling left out. And so that produces resentment, frustration, anger, and we see all of that kind of explode over the course of these 4 years.
Right, and then dropped into the middle of these struggling communities, like an atom bomb, is something called crack, right? And the crack wars and the war on drugs really escalate. Major money coming out of Washington to do this. And, while all of this innovation is going on, while the skyscrapers are going up downtown, they are doubling and tripling the population on Rikers Island. They are just locking up kids as fast as they can.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, so quickly, there's no place to put them. They talk about bringing a barge in, a prison barge in, and columnists are joking about turning the upper deck at Yankee Stadium into a prison. I mean, it's,
So now what's singular about all of this is that there are big personalities and they're big egos, and this isn't us as observers or journalists or historians sort of magnifying them. They really are a real piece of work, each one of them.
Yeah.
Trump, Giuliani, Sharpton. These are people who, Don King, even the bit players are really something to behold at this point. And that's kind of unique to New York, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's unique to New York, and in some ways, I think it's unique to this era because both because of all the kind of crazy things that were happening in the city, because of this like crazy collision of money and poverty, and also because of the tabloids. I mean, I think the tabloids really helped elevate these characters into almost like kind of comic book figures, really. I mean, I call them the gods of New York, kind of tongue-in-cheek, because, they're really kind of tabloid gods, right? They're like Greek gods, and New York is their Mount Olympus, if you will. So it's, I think the tabloids are part of it too, and, that culture's now gone.
Yes.
But at the time, everyone in New York read the same newspapers, these same 3 tabloids, and plus the New York Times, and watched the same kind of local news shows. And so you could really build a reputation, build a profile, particularly in the age of the kind of reemergence of kind of the gossip industry and the worship of celebrity, and all of that just helped kind of elevate these characters into the kind of proportion that we just don't really get anymore.
Right. So no matter what the story was, whether it's insider trading on Wall Street or a mob bust or a mob hit, or a run-of-the-mill crime story, or political corruption, which you certainly get into in the third term of the Koch administration, it's blown out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. It's what everybody has to talk about because it's all you have to talk about, right? And then that really is different from now.
It is.
Yeah.
Though there's one figure from this period who learned everything he knows, in 1980s New York, and you see him doing it now, in
out of the Oval Office.
Out of the Oval Office.
Well, I mean, it really is true. There any number of people have said that to understand President Trump. This is what Maggie Haberman, our friend, who came in and we talked about her book on the podcast here. In her book, Confidence Man, the key to understanding Trump. She said it, Wayne Barrett, Neil Barsky, all of the people who chronicled all of Donald Trump pre-2015 said to understand this man, you have to understand 1980s New York and the tabloid culture in which his public life was forged.
Yeah.
And you nailed it. I mean, you nailed it, right? Like this is what he does. He invents things. He lies. He makes up stuff.
Yeah.
He wants to be in the newspaper, even as a fool or a jester or as a bankrupt, failed businessman, more than he wants to not be in the newspaper, right?
Exactly. It's all about just capturing and holding the public attention, and also kind of building a story. He builds, it's a narrative, like creating a narrative, being in the middle of a narrative, whatever it is. People, I think often think about The Apprentice as being where Trump learned those skills. No, it's like the tabloids in 1980s.
No, he did it in real life. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, and then look, the flip side of that, of course, and because you sort of touch on it in your prior book, and it's certainly one of the themes here, is that the positive side of that, of being able to put your ego out there, put your whole personality out there, throw yourself out there, is what Ed Koch is doing successfully to try and revive the city, right? I mean,
absolutely.
This is a city where, any number of Fortune 500 companies are relocating. It's experiencing population loss. AIDS is taking dozens of lives a week, and nobody knows what to do about it. They weren't clear on what the transmission was, or there was certainly no drugs, certainly no vaccine available or anything like that. And so the good side of it is Koch. Yeah. The other side of it is what we see, say, Trump starting to do. And then you have Rudy Giuliani, who's got a little bit of both, right? He goes to great lengths to portray himself as the white knight, the savior of New York.
Right.
But you also point out, and I don't think enough has been written about this, he was cutting some corners pretty early on.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, he was celebrated as during these years, he was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District, and he was, celebrated as the great white knight who was cleaning up the city. But first of all, that job, which is kind of a famous job that produced Supreme Court justices, governors, all sorts of kind of celebrated figures, it was always done a particular way where you didn't prosecute your cases in the media, you prosecuted them in the courtroom. And, Rudy turned that completely on its head. I mean, he had a press conference every time he, charged someone, indicted someone, just a kind of an endless stream of media about him. Mm-hmm. And he went after always the bold-faced names, always the kind of the celebrities were always in his sights. And, he was clearly the whole time he was very deliberately building his reputation, building his name in preparation to run for office, which of course he did for the first time in 1989 when he ran for mayor.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, and some of these cases like the Giuliani 3, where they go and they snatch these Wall Street guys, and nobody's going to be too sympathetic to these guys because they were kind of playing close to the edge. Yeah. But to snatch them up out of their trading floor, parade them out in front of their colleagues in handcuffs, and then there's really no charge.
He had no case. Two of the guys get off completely, and one, makes a plea deal just because he's so, years later, Giuliani won't give up, won't acknowledge that he doesn't have a case. So the guy finally just, agrees to a minor charge.
Yeah.
And some of his other cases unravel later too. I mean,
sure.
And his famous mob case, which he was the one that put him on the map, where he went after all the
commission
bosses,
case, where they went after all 5 families,
exactly,
and made it one big conspiracy.
Exactly. Yeah. It becomes clear that actually, wasn't Rudy's idea to go after all 5 of them. It was someone else from the State Crime Task Force, and also all the evidence he used to prosecute that case that had been gleaned over the course of years by the FBI when they were wiretapping, luxury vehicles and social clubs, et cetera. That all predated him.
Right.
He inherited that whole case.
That's right. No, that's right. But they did break the back of the mob, so we'll give them credit for that, right?
Yep.
Now, and there's some crime cases that you talk about because that's what's driving so much of this. The Preppy murder case, and I hate to talk about it that way, but that's how the tabloids refer to it. That's how it's burned into my memory, where this prep school kid, Robert Chambers, kills Jessica Levin, and it's a horrible case.
Terrible story.
And every bias that you can think of. There's a little anti-Semitism in there. There's this celebrity culture where it was the first time I in my memory where the accused had fans just because he was a good-looking guy. There'd be these girls who would go sit in front of the courthouse or whatever. I mean, really troubling stuff. There's the Howard Beach case, which I mean, there's real people dying, I guess, is the thing that really strikes me here. And you don't pull any punches on that. You know, that when Edward Byrne, the police officer, who's just flat out assassinated by a drug gang in Queens. I mean,
his first, it was like his first night on duty. I mean,
he had never made an arrest, right? He's like, you know, this is real, like, sort of high stakes in a way that the jokiness of the tabloids often misses. That there are a lot of people who lost their lives.
Yeah, and even Bonfire too was, you know, because it was sort of a satirical portrayal of this time. But yeah, you're right. There was real. Plus, you know, the AIDS crisis. I mean, we're talking about, you know, real tragedy.
Yeah. And actually, you do a great job with that with Larry Kramer, where the formation of ACT UP. Right? I mean, what we see are movements. Sharpton's leading his own movement. ACT UP comes into existence, and they're leading a movement. People had to sort of summon some energy and some courage and a lot of nerve in order to get in there and mix it up with these bold-faced names and these big personalities who are otherwise driving the city in the wrong direction.
That's exactly right. And they also recognized the same thing that, you know, Trump and Rudy recognized, which was that you know, you can get the media's attention. If you can get the media's attention and keep it, that's a form of power.
Yeah.
And you know, Al Sharpton, you know, learned that during these years, and you know, continued to employ that tactic for the rest of his you know, career. Still doing it today.
He's got a network TV show, man. The guy, you know.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the current moment, because some of the things that you talk about are still very much at play right now. I love the treatment you gave to Billy Boggs, that was her pseudonym, but this woman who became an avatar, was defended by the New York Civil Liberties Union. She was living on the streets, defecating on the streets, a real nuisance on the Upper East Side, but somehow ended up, you know, giving lectures at Harvard Law School and was a cause celeb and went all the way up through the courts. She's on 60 Minutes and she's like, I have the right to live on the streets and it's the city's fault that I don't have a place. I was a political prisoner, not just a schizophrenic lady who's off her meds, right? Although I guess both could be true. Well, we're still talking about the same questions. I mean, there's just a headline the other day where the mayor's like involuntary confinement of seriously mentally ill people on the streets. And I'm like, wait a second. We've been through this.
I know. It's true. I mean, and you sort of imagine that I think we people assume that homelessness is something that's kind of been in New York forever. I mean, it really hasn't been. I mean, before the 1980s, you know, you had what were known as bums or winos or, you know, vagrants or, you know, what have you around the Bowery, but you didn't have thousands of people living on the streets. I mean, and that happened in the early 80s. It really began in the early 80s. And I think at the time there was this sense that, well, this is just a crisis that we need to deal with and address. And you know, it never happened. And we're still struggling with what to do with these people, and in particular with the mentally ill, who, you know, are pose a whole different kind of challenge.
You did great research, because I had never really heard the backstory of Ellen Baxter. There are a lot of smaller characters in here who have really moved the city in some profound ways. And I just knew of her as the person who had done specialized supportive housing in a way that everybody knew, everybody respected, everybody wanted to emulate. I didn't realize that she had been the first person to go out on the streets and take a census of who's living on the streets. She really learned this from the bottom up.
Yeah, that's right. She and Kim Hopper were kind of graduate students, and they that's what they did. They spent a year just out in the streets, in the tunnels around Grand Central. It really just interviewing homeless people, and you have to remember that at the time this was in the late 80s, and yet at the time, the idea that people would be living in the streets was shocking to people. I mean, it was like a whole new and deeply kind of troubling thought that had like happened to New York, that was happening in the world. Right. You know, they really, she really brought it to the public's attention.
Well, I mean, and again, we still have these questions here, right? Yeah. I mean, so putting on the hat of the man who wrote this book, we've got history being made. right in front of us.
We do.
This is a heck of an election year.
Yeah.
We've got a transition going on in this city. I've got my own trends that I've identified and have been writing about. I'm curious as to what you're seeing here. This feels like a pivotal moment.
It does.
This
Yeah.
election.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, I think I look at what's happening right now as almost a kind of an answer to what happened in the 1980s. If you think about the history of the city in these kind of chapters, right? And then so you had the kind of post-World War II chapter, which was the great working class city.
Sure.
Then you had the kind of 70s chapter, which was it all falls apart. Then you have the 80s chapter where it all kind of bounces back and is reborn and the economy's reoriented around Wall Street, et cetera. Now you're getting the backlash against that, against what Bloomberg called the luxury product, right?
Sure.
Now I think, the chickens are coming home to roost. I mean, I think that now you have a sense of like the city, it has become too unaffordable. The wealth gap has become untenable, and now it's as I'm sure you've recognized, like that Mamdani's base is not even poor New Yorkers. It's people who are earning $70,000 to $140,000 a year. These are people who should be able to live in this city and can't afford to live where they want to live and et cetera. So I think this is very much you can really see this almost as a bookend to what began in the 80s.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, we have made no provision for them, right? The young couple that moves here, and maybe they're in the private sector, maybe they're in the philanthropic sector, doesn't really matter. But if they're making in the $80,000 to $120,000 range combined, we don't really have programs for them. We don't really have an organization that's going to look out for them. If you're seriously mentally ill, there's a couple of groups that are out there. If you are desperately poor, there's a lot of programs. There's a lot of people out there to help you, a lot of politicians who will try and meet your needs. If you're ultra wealthy, well, they've bought their own solutions, right? Yeah. So they don't particularly need that much from the government anyway. And then there's this middle class, or aspiring middle class, who are just kind of floating out there.
What would have once been middle class.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And they're floating out there, and they don't have anything. And so now here comes this 33-year-old named Mamdani, and he says, you know what? I'm going through the same thing. I mean, he sat right there in that chair, in fact, for this podcast, and said he remembered, wondering when his life was going to start. Yeah. Like he was taking the same bus he had taken as a kid. Yeah. He couldn't get any of the jobs that he was trying to get. He wasn't going, he was going nowhere fast, or at least that's how it felt. Yeah. And somebody needed to do something.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's whatever you think of him too. I mean, I think that politically, I mean, it's been kind of exciting to just see someone kind of galvanize a constituency, galvanize people in a way that it's been a while. I feel like since we've had a local politician in New York, a mayoral candidate who really lit people up. He
doesn't have the kind of bombast of a Koch or a Giuliani. Am I missing something, or is that just a personal style thing, or does leadership in the modern New York require different skills and a different approach than what we would see in the 80s?
I would say that he doesn't. It's certainly true that he doesn't have the bombast, but I think what he does have is, particularly when you think about Koch, Koch was someone who was always out in the streets, right? He loved interacting with New Yorkers, and I think for most of his 3 terms, really, with the exception of the last term, there was always this sense that this man, whatever flaws he had, this man loved New York. This man was committed to New York. He was willing to listen to New Yorkers, even if he was going to have a kind of an obnoxious response to their complaint or whatever. That was his style, but he cared. And he loved just being out there. And I feel like Mamdani seems to have that to me too, that sense of like, look, he's a real New Yorker. He feels like a New Yorker. He loves interacting with New Yorkers. He's putting himself out there. He's clearly putting himself out there. Yeah. And that's I think, that is Koch-like to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think with Rudy, it was different because I think he presented himself almost in a more almost like paternalistic way, right? Like I'm gonna I'm going to keep you safe. You can,
well, Catholic priest from the 50s kind of thing.
Exactly.
Kind of vibe, suburban Catholic priest, actually.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I thought, and some of this was actually talked about at the start of his administration, that Eric Adams might be that kind of a guy, a Koch-like guy, who was from the streets, in the streets, willing to mix it up with people. And he certainly still tries to portray himself that way. I don't know if that has worked out for him as well as he had hoped.
Seems not to have. You're right, though. I mean, I do think there was a moment early on when it felt like, oh, he could be that guy too.
Yeah. I mean, the scandals take something out of you. I mean, you talk about how right around the time all of the scandals were breaking for Koch is when he had his stroke. He literally thought his head was going to explode, and felt suicidal and so forth. We haven't gotten that level of personal disclosure from Eric Adams, but he's been through some very tough months.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, a lot of what was plaguing Koch at that point wasn't just the scandals. I mean, they were one thing, but it was also that he was worried about getting outed by Larry Kramer.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What I knew a lot of the story. I didn't. You filled in one part of the story I did not know, which was that Giuliani was specifically targeting Ed Koch's former lover.
Yeah.
Over a Mickey Mouse, kind of
nothing.
Very thin. Possible wrongdoing, which turned out not to be any wrongdoing at all.
Yeah.
But they put all of this pressure on him to sort of implicitly threaten him in the hope that he would disclose that Ed Koch was his lover.
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty grimy stuff.
It is very grimy stuff. Yeah. I mean, it didn't, it didn't work, but it was, you see, I mean, I think you really see Giuliani's kind of overweening ambition kind of early on. And, it's what kind of carried him. And then, of course, initially he's a very unsuccessful politician when he comes out of the gate, because really all he has is that ambition. He doesn't really have a political identity. He doesn't have an ideology. He's just a super ambitious prosecutor.
Yeah.
It's not really until Roger Ailes comes along that, takes over his '89 campaign that Giuliani kind of finds his political voice, I guess, if you will.
I fast forward and I look at Giuliani, I look at Trump. Notwithstanding the fact that Donald Trump is the most powerful man in the world. But you look at, I don't know about you, but I look at him and you see a person who, if you look at personal qualities, you look at his family life, I see a lot of wreckage, certainly with Rudy. It's professional and in every way that counts. He's just, he's a mess. The guy's a mess.
Yeah.
Sharpton has had his problems. He got divorced and it was not a happy time.
Yeah.
He's always struck me. I've gotten to know him over the years. He strikes me as a very lonely guy. In his own way. He doesn't have any peers.
Yep.
Like when Al Sharpton wakes up in the morning, who's he going to call and say, what are my colleagues up to? He doesn't really have, he's self-invented in that way. I guess that's one of the things
and I think you're right. I mean, someone who's so on the move all the time and putting himself in the kind of, in the public eye all the time, that usually is a sign of some kind of deeper loneliness, right?
Yeah. Well, all of these guys.
For affirmation from everyone else.
I guess that's what ties all of these guys together, because, there's... you see some of it, frankly, with Andrew Cuomo, right? Where people say, why is he running? And I'm like, listen, why does a shark swim in the ocean, right? That's what they do. Yeah. And there's no going in reverse. There's no floating on your back. Yeah. There's the next prey. There's the next kill. There's the next season. There's the next election. Yeah. There's the next fortune to be made in the business context. So, and that's actually what drives New York, right?
No, that's right. I mean, that is the, it's the place where you go to make it, right? It's the city of ambition. And that's why, to bring it back to our present moment, I think that's what feels like it's kind of broken right now, right? This idea that New York is the land of possibility and opportunity, right? That's its identity.
Sure.
For everything else, it's supposed to create opportunity for people, and I feel like for too many people right now, it doesn't feel that way, and that is, New York can't function if it doesn't do that.
Although going back to your book in the 80s, the city didn't do all that much. I'm here as a personal witness. Yeah. I got here in 85. I was pretty much on my own. Yeah. All I wanted was, I had just got my driver's license.
Yeah.
all I needed was a press pass and a computer and a car, and I couldn't get any of it. I couldn't get any of it. I got the press pass because I worked at a startup newspaper.
There you go.
My dad co-signed for me for a loan for my car.
Okay.
I had a place to stay because nobody wanted to live in this brownstone in this horribly dangerous neighborhood called Crown Heights. And I got a computer as my graduation present from college because nobody was going to lend me any money. The bank wouldn't lend me a freaking dime. I had to get my father to, it would never have occurred to me to look anywhere near City Hall for any help in getting started on my career.
Right. So you could afford your apartment.
Well, it's a busted up brownstone with crack files on the front steps. That's what I could afford, right? I could sweep the files off, and I could go bump some money off my dad for lunch. That's what it was. I was making $150 a week at a startup newspaper, man.
The City Sun?
Yeah, man. It was, in fact, Rhea, thank you. You mentioned my story.
I do, yeah.
Death of a Generation, the first story of the first issue.
Cover story.
Yeah, man. And it actually talked about some of the things that you're talking about. That there's New York on the upswing, and there's a New York that's in deep, deep trouble. Yeah. Do you think now that there is, especially not just Mamdani talking about it, there's some others who are talking about it as well, deep, serious trouble on the order of an emerging homeless population in the 80s? Is the trouble that's being overlooked that serious at this point?
I mean, I think that the looking at all the enthusiasm we're seeing around Mamdani's campaign, I feel like it seems to suggest some kind of crisis. I mean, for a candidate who's that far left, don't you think? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like this is a sign of some kind.
Yes. I think of it as generational, which is an overly broad word that, hides a lot of other analysis, right? But I think there's something going on there, right? Yeah. That people are sick of these same names that have been in the tabloids for 40 years. Yeah. It's like we're still dealing with Trump, Sliwa, Sharpton, and these characters. When are they going to get off the stage? Yeah. And let somebody else try and play out maybe a different way of using this great city.
Yeah, we need some new gods.
Yeah, exactly. New Testament. Yes, absolutely. Look, congratulations. I'm glad you're going to be doing a lot of this stuff. You're going to option this. This is going to be on TV. You're going to be doing all your usual stuff. Congratulations. Thanks for coming by.
Much, Errol. So fun.
The Gods of New York. Do you want more conversations with the people who are shaping the future of New York City and beyond? Check out our New York One podcast channel in the description. And hit subscribe to let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, elections, and issues.